I know it's been a very long time since I posted. When I say very long time, it's more that it's a long time from my perspective and my channel, in that I was doing lots of reels, lots of Instagram snippets, and also on YouTube as well, doing lots of shorts, and then I just dropped off, and I think that's a good thing. I've always said if I'm not in the mood to post, or I don't feel like I've got a lot to say, I'm not going to post for no reason. So sticking with the whole purposefulness, let's get into today's video. It's all about the question of how we spend our time. And I did a reel yesterday on this because now that I've been applying for jobs, I've been looking at different sort of opportunities, but also looking at it at a lens of what would actually really fulfill me in this stage of my life. And I think as you get older, you stop, I feel like I've seen a lot of these videos on my algorithm as well, you stop pushing for, the top, or a role that's got X, Y, and Z, because I think you realise that you're no longer, if you're sacrificing your time towards a career, it has to be meaningful, but also has to fill your cup. And if you're stressed all the time, if your whole job is just emails, I think you will be dissatisfied. So I've been in this sort of mindful approach, and taking it in a way of what kind of job will tick a lot of boxes while also not sacrificing, your own life, and being able to do things at your own pace and what you enjoy doing yourself. So, for example, if you really love being outdoors, doing your own personal pursuits and hobbies, and then you find that you're in a rigid routine because of work. Like, I've had conversations with people that are making great money, but then something gives. Something has to give. You can't have it all. That's the takeaway. And I was thinking how difficult and unfair, I know it might sound like such a silly realisation because everyone knows this, is that women are always disproportionately affected by this, in that they have to pick and choose, and either they're the career woman, or they're the homemaker, or you can be a hybrid, but then you might have to work part-time. Like, it's never a case of, you really love this thing and you can go all in on it. At some point you have to pause, and then when you return to the career industry, or the career ladder, let's say, you'll never return in the same way you did before. And that's why I've seen so many stories on LinkedIn as well, where women, return to work and they just realize, like, this is not the life I wanted. And especially after women have children, for example, they have a different perspective and a different lens to the career world in general too, not just how their role was playing out in their lives. So it's just, I guess this is turning into a rant, but I really don't want it to be like that. My current thoughts have been how to navigate having a purposeful, mindful life while also using time wisely, and then ensuring that I'm still developing myself as an individual, as a Muslim, still being proud of the kind of person I'm becoming, and not falling into somebody else's life. I think when you have a new company, in terms of friends, family, in-laws, whatever it may be, you can easily sway into their way of life and their way of being, when really you should still try and hold on to what's true for you and what's meaningful to you, rather than being swayed. And I think when you're a strong-minded individual, it's so easy to perceive any suggestions as a threat, when really it's not. It's everyone should adapt. We should all sort of ebb and flow, be like a river almost, towards life and the things that it throws at us, rather than having a set attitude and mindset towards how to live life. There's more ways than one of what is right. And that's, I think, the title of this video is probably can you have it all? Can women have it all? Especially when you navigate, let's say, South Asian culture. Yeah, I'd say lots of it is culture as opposed to Islam as well. And how can you do it in the right way? I don't think you ever can. And I've seen so many funny, not funny reels, but quite real reels, in that they always talk about how, you know, being the good girl and being the good South Asian girl in your family leads to sadness and dissatisfaction because you live your life for others. And I think, especially in Afghan culture as well, you can be so influenced by people pleasing and being the perfect daughter, sister, wife, all these roles, and then you forget about what you actually would like to do. And I think half the time, let's say most of the time, it may not result into negative consequence, you know, but it's more, do you as an individual know what you would like to do with your life? You know, that's a question you need to ask yourself. And I think too often women are unfortunately pulled into set roles, and then it's just like you fall in line as opposed to questioning, having critical thinking in which direction you'd want to lead your life. And it's so, I think maybe you could make the argument that men feel that pressure too, you know, like they could feel the pressure to be a certain kind of man, a certain type of husband, certain type of son, and that pressure also leads into the behaviours we see today where women feel like men aren't stepping up to the plate or behaving in the way they would expect them to. So yeah, I think it could go both ways, but I think my reflection on this as a whole is, if you are a woman, Asian, Muslim, all these things, or actually women just in general, always, before doing any behaviour, before any action, all these things, life changes, life decisions, really have a think and truly check in with yourself, because I think too often it's sometimes decisions are made for you, or decisions are just expected and answers are expected of you to be a certain way. And sometimes I think we assume that of others. So for example, if somebody hasn't said anything, but you, with your people pleasing mindset, assume that they would expect you to behave and act in line, for example, in a certain way in a certain situation, that also is negative. You know, like it's not just from external and outside pressure. Sometimes it's you and your own learned behaviors that are creating a new negative situation, and that nobody even said those things, you know, and you're now thinking, oh, I should have done this, if only I did that, you know, and then you spiral in that way as well. So yeah, final conclusion on this is really check in with yourself. Don't live for others. Really think about what works well for you, but also think about later on as well. I think it's so easy to just, and one of the lectures I was listening to was about nafs and, you know, our base level desires. So easy to just fall into thinking like, what feels good right now, what would make you feel a lot of things to do with feelings and emotions, but we know that those are fleeting. So you can't make life decisions and let's say even job decisions based on, oh, do I feel great every day? Like, you're not going to feel great every day. Emotions, especially for women and our hormones, will fluctuate. So you can't expect to be feeling 100% all of the time. Like, you can't be like this all the time. But you also may not be like this all the time. So there's going to be ups and downs, and that's completely normal. Don't interpret that as a negative or that you're doing something wrong. So I hope this has been useful. As always, in the comments, if there's any topics that you'd like me to reflect on more so, please let me know. The other thing I was thinking about was how crazy, like, without posting often and speaking to a camera often, I feel like I'm not as eloquent as I was before, which is insane to think. But then you could interpret it as it's because you're having more maybe internal thoughts in your brain, and when you don't verbalize it, it's harder to process it, or you're not sort of arguing with yourself or let's say unpacking it, and and it's the same as I think journaling. So when you write it down, you can process something better and also find the words for it. Whereas if you just think and live life as and when, you don't really grow or learn from anything, because you don't give yourself the space. And I think that's the other point I wanted to make. I know I already wrapped up, but I don't post a lot, so you'll take this. Is how it's so easy to just fall into a routine and just do things because you're doing it. Like, let's say it's the weekend. What do you do on the weekend? You go to gym, you have this breakfast, you do this, you do that, you pray, you do that. Having that routine, while it's great to have discipline and focus and milestones in your brain and also things that you want to be achieving, which helps you achieve them, it's also sometimes I think it pulls you towards potential depression or thoughts that aren't positive, because it's like Groundhog Day. And I think I did another video on this some time ago, I think it was over Christmas period, because it did feel like Groundhog Day at that point, in that you're just in a cyclical way of living. And I think injecting some joy in life is from being a bit spontaneous. I think doing things that you don't usually do also gives you that bit of boost. Not to say that you should seek dopamine for everything, right? Like, you get my point. It's by having some novelty, you can continue to sort of discover new things that you might not have known about yourself, or family or other people around you. So that's my other recommendation. And I'd love to hear from you. What have you been doing to discover more things about yourself that you probably wouldn't have done last year, for example? Okay, as always, comments are there. You can also message on Instagram, and I'll see you next month potentially.